Welcome to the IVF Abroad podcast for people who are struggling with infertility and trying to conceive and who are facing more obstacles than options when it comes to having fertility testing or treatment in their home countries. Alongside other experts, I will share, educate and empower you on your journey and help you to learn more about going abroad for advanced fertility testing and treatments like IVF and egg donation. I'm Emma Haslam, your host, now mum of one, and the go-to expert in fertility treatment abroad. Since the birth of our son in 2018, I have made it my mission to make fertility treatment more informed, transparent, accessible, supported and affordable for more people. And I help people just like you to become unstuck, to find a best fit clinic that truly meets their needs and to have fertility treatment on their terms and timescales so they can achieve their dreams of growing their families. And I'm here now to help you too. Be sure to check out the free resources in the show notes for more help after listening to today's episode. So, thank you for being here again this week for another episode of the IVF Abroad podcast. And I'm excited to be here because this week I have a very special guest, Melanie Brown, nutritionist, who I know lots of you will know. So, first of all, thank you so much, Melanie, for joining me and welcome to the podcast.
It's my pleasure to be here, Emma. Thank you for asking me.
So I'm hoping this will be a really useful chat for people. Like I said, loads of you will know Melanie. She's a little bit famous, I think, slightly in the fertility nutrition world. I know she's going to say she's not, but she is a little bit. And I remember following Melanie when we were going through our own journey with infertility. So I was aware of Melanie back then as well. And obviously, as I've begun working in this world, I've become more aware of the work that she does. So I wanted to bring her onto the podcast so we can learn some more about nutrition and to see what her thoughts are really about how nutrition can impact our fertility journeys. And maybe get some tips, etc., before having things like IVF. So, but in this discussion today, we want to focus on both male and female side of things because that's important to Melanie. She does a lot of work in both areas, and it's important to me too, and I'm sure important to you listeners as well. So, Melanie, it's like blind date, isn't it? Can you introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit more about what you do and your experience?
Well, I'm a nutritionist and I've been working in this area for 25 years. So I'm a proper old lag here. But I've noticed a lot of changes in the last 25 years, really. A lot more focus on complementary therapies. I hate calling them alternative therapies. I wouldn't regard nutrition as an alternative therapy, but complementary therapies helping IVF outcome, not taking the place of IVF, but just helping improve the success rate. And that's really fantastic. And then the other changes are in, the male role, much more information and about that now. So I've been working in this area, as I said, for 25 years. I started off working for Zita West, who's she's properly famous, Zita, for being the first person that started a complementary to IVF or to fertility issues clinic. And it was probably just pure luck that I ended up there after university. I went to university late at 37, finished at when I was 41 and just landed a job there. And it was hilarious because we had a polyclinic at uni where I would literally have an anxiety attack if I had to do more than 2 members of the hapless public would come in and let us do our nutritional therapy on them. And I'd practically have a panic attack. I arrived on the first day at Zita's. I had 9 clients back to back, no lunch and no desk. And that was a baptism by fire, I can tell you. But I learned so much from that. And then in 2017, I finally finished my master's at the University of Surrey in nutritional medicine. And my final thesis was on the effect of male obesity on IVF outcome, because all the focus is on women and fat shaming like mad, and nothing on the effect of the obese man on IVF outcome. He's just left out in the cold, and everybody's banging on to the poor woman about, oh, you must lose weight, you know. So that was what I did my master's thesis on. And that sort of doing my master's opened up a lot of doors for me. Actually, it was probably the best thing I ever did. I think I'm rambling now, Emma, and you need to ask me some questions about nutrition because I'm just talking about myself.
No, I love it. But do you know what? It's super helpful background. And I mean, what an amazing first job.
Well, it was fantastic. I was there for 8 years. And so I really learnt everything. None of us would be where we are without Zita, actually. My field and acupuncture as well. She brought acupuncture really, and counselling. And then what with that comes you know, all the people who feel, yeah, I've got a voice in this and I can give my advice and I can tell people or advise people what to do and where to go. You know, that never happened before because we were just all, I mean, almost spat on by the sort of IVF and medical community, you know, as being ridiculous alternative quack medicine, snake oil, bollocks, you know. I mean, honestly, it was terrible. And Zita got a lot of flack. People were incredibly rude to her when she was giving talks. It used to make me cry. She was so rudely spoken to by these idiot, I'm sorry to say, mostly male, you know, IVF doctors who just displayed such ignorance. But she battled through, thank God, and, you know, opened up the space for the rest of us to do what we do.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for your introduction. I will ask you some questions now, but that was very interesting. I know it's uncomfortable to talk about yourself, isn't it? But it was extremely interesting.
Oh, once I get going, I can't stop. So you need to make it.
Okay, so first question then. Why do you think nutrition matters, or how does nutrition matter when it comes to fertility, trying to conceive and, you know, planning to have assisted conception? Like, why is it important?
Well, I think it matters nowadays way more than it probably did in the past because people just ate more healthy diets in the past. And nutrition is the fuel, the energy for all our cells, including our eggs and sperm. And they're very important cells. They carry the DNA of the future child. An oocyte is a big cell and a sperm is a little tiny cell, but it has to go a long way to make its journey to the egg. And all of this, you know, if you think of an athlete wouldn't be running, you know, on chicken and chips and Diet Coke, would they? You know, they have sports nutritionists who know exactly how to build up the muscle. And this is the same with fertility. You know that there are specific nutrients that help sperm and egg health, hormones, blood flow, all the sort of connecting things. And that's why it's so important to think of these nutrients as fuel for your future baby, because your eggs are half your future baby. And you want a healthy, it's not all about, Emma, sometimes people think it's just about that positive pregnancy test. I mean, although when you've been through fertility treatment, that brings a whole load of new fears. But that positive pregnancy test is not. It's about having a healthy pregnancy. It's about having a healthy baby that grows up to be a healthy child. There's that whole future. And the food that you eat is really essential for that.
And do you think it plays a role in potential success outcomes for things like IVF?
Oh, absolutely. If you're looking at egg health, you're looking at protein needs because your ovaries are having, instead of releasing just one mature egg, they're being hammered to, you know, produce as many follicles with mature eggs in them. So we know that protein needs are increased then. We know that certain nutrients, which are currently under research for longevity, for sort of slowing down aging, but of course the biggest enemy of egg health is aging. And so some of these nutrients have now been extrapolated from longevity research into maybe they help oocytes as well. So mitochondria, we know so much about the mitochondria, the powerhouse, the energy source for every cell. And oocytes have a lot of mitochondria. And as we get older, our batteries just go flat. They just need to be supercharged up. So there are certain nutrients that have been as well researched as possible. You can't do gold standard trials on nutritional supplements. Nobody will pay for them.
Mm-hmm.
Big Pharma's not going to pay. They're too busy producing the IVF drugs.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to pay for these big trials that sometimes people say, oh, there's no evidence for this. Where's the gold standard evidence? And you just think, oh, for God's sake, it doesn't have to be gold standard evidence. It's not possible to have that for nutrition. You have to look at the evidence that's out there and take a view, which is what I do with my egg health kind of program. So, very directly it can affect. And also, Emma, is about what you don't eat as much as what you do eat, because we know the effect of cheap industrial cooking oils, fast foods. There's huge stuff about ultra processed foods, the microbiome, the foods that damage the microbiome, i.e. the ultra processed foods, the foods that are good, i.e. vegetables, and how the microbiome communicate with every microbiome in our body. So we have a microbiome in our uterus, in our endometrium, which we thought back in the day when I was first starting that the uterus was sterile. And now, of course, we know that's not the case. The vaginal microbiome, it's big now. I do a lot of vaginal microbiomes because it's very important. And this all stems from the gut. So what you eat really has a far-reaching influence on all aspects of your fertility, both negative and positive. So we know inflammation is really key. And some of these foods cause, they raise inflammation. They're very aging. And we don't want that for our eggs, we have to sort of try and de-age them a bit, And so, keeping out these foods is really important as much as adding in all the essential foods.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, and what you said about is, I understand that with this sort of subject area, Big Pharma are not going to fund these studies. And it's the same with, some of the clinics that I work with abroad who are really leading the way in certain treatments that are experimental.
Experimental, yeah.
I will be very open to people and say, look, and so will the clinics, there isn't the evidence because nobody's funding independent, impartial studies. However, in our clinical experience, which I guess is what you're saying here as well,
yes,
we have seen these things make a huge difference to people like you over and over and over again. And, we don't want to mislead people and tell them that things are evidence-based when they're not. But
yeah.
I agree with you that it doesn't mean to say that these things don't work or have a part or a role to play within a bigger picture of things that we can try and do to help. Because that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, I suppose it gives us a little bit of control in a way, in a journey that can feel very out of control.
Oh my God, yes, exactly.
And while we don't want people to feel like worried about what they eat or, blaming or shaming anybody or anything, I think it's important for people to perhaps understand some things they might not know and things that they might be able to do that actually could end up having, the positive impact. What sort of nutrients are like the most impactful, would you say, for people trying to conceive, like through food and things like that?
Well, the sort of common nutrients that everybody knows about, zinc, obviously that's probably the most famous. With women, it's iron. You've got to be careful. So many people are borderline anemic. People who are vegan, even vegetarian, have massively heavy periods. So people with endometriosis, adenomyosis, even polycystic ovaries, really common. And these are common reasons for fertility issues in the first place. And so making sure that people are because you're preparing people to go into pregnancy. So all of this is, again, not just, oh, great, I've got the positive pregnancy test, so I don't have to do any of this anymore. It's kind of retraining yourself to understand that the food that you eat in pregnancy does have a massive impact on the growing embryo and fetus. So zinc, vitamin E, iron, All of these things you can get from food, but obviously if you're anemic, you have to take a supplement, and that's things like the sort of more novel things like coenzyme Q10. And then there's even more novel things for egg quality like NAD+, nicotinamide mononucleotide, urolithin A. These are all ones that I use. And I say to my clients, look, some of my clients, we're going to throw the kitchen sink at this. You've had 3 or 4 unsuccessful cycles. I know this is expensive. I'm not even telling you that they're going to work. I've just found them, but I know they're not going to harm.
Yes.
Throw everything at this. And sometimes they say, no, don't want that. Just want the basics. Couple of the good ones. And sometimes they say, yeah, just give me everything and I'll just take everything. Because it's about no regrets, isn't it? Sure, like you say, you're so powerless in this situation that any way of getting some control over it is very helpful, I think. And just what you eat is a very simple way of getting some control over it, but it can be quite effective as well.
And do you find vitamin D? I'm seeing that coming up.
Oh gosh, vitamin D, yes. Yes. I mean, vitamin D, absolutely critical. I often test my clients for their vitamin D. This is the ideal time of year to do a vitamin D test. And that will give you a good idea of how well you've absorbed vitamin D over the summer and how much you need. And there are so many cheap tests around, 35, 40 quid, Medichecks, things like that you do.
Yeah.
The difficulty is knowing how much you're supposed to take because they're very conservative with their recommendations. And actually, when you've got very low vitamin D levels, you have to take quite a high level to get you up to the level, and then you drop it off to a maintenance level.
And when I start working with clients, because I see certain things come up at clinics and they're going to have their sort of baseline test done for consultation, I will always say to them, I suggest you have a vitamin D done. The clinic would then advise on doses and everything else, but so many of my clients, so many people generally, are insufficient or deficient in. I was one of them. My levels were on the floor.
No, it's absolutely true. And as we get to February, and people do IVF in February,
Yeah.
and by that time they are, kind of wrecked. And simple things like being very, very sufficiently nourished with your vitamin D. And vitamin D is associated with testosterone metabolism and egg quality as well. And of course, your immunity, like COVID. I know 3 people who've got COVID at the moment, Emma. COVID is so important not to catch these things if you're going for an IVF cycle. It's terrible for sperm. Terrible.
Yes, and it has an effect for quite a number of months, doesn't it, on people?
So you've got to mind your immune system, and vitamin D is really important for that.
Thank you. And I presume that's something that you can help people with if they want the vitamin D sorting.
I would always say that everybody should take 1,000 IU. The recommendation, the guidelines say 400. It simply isn't enough, Emma. 400 is not enough. It's just, I can categorically say it's not enough. 1,000, and then get yourself tested as well.
Perfect. Thank you. And what about quality of supplements? I kind of didn't realise that your kind of supermarket supplements, and it might not be the same for all of them, your cheap supplements, I guess, are filled with a lot of rubbish and not a lot of the good stuff. And actually it's important to take quality supplements. And maybe people know this, I don't know, but I didn't think about it.
No, you don't.
Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, yes, because many of the nutrients in supplements can be very poorly absorbed if they're sort of the cheaper versions of the nutrient. Iron is quite a good example of that. So iron is not very well absorbed as, say, ferrous sulfate, which is the cheapest form of iron that you can get at the counter. But you have to take a very high dose of it to get enough absorption. And then sometimes people get constipated from it and things like that. Whereas if you use a better quality iron at much less amount in a supplement, it's much better. It's absorbed just as well, but it doesn't give you the side effects. Magnesium can be a bit like that. Zinc, a lot of the minerals, calcium, again, calcium carbonate is basically chalk, and calcium citrate and bisglycinate, we know are much better for women, for example.
Okay.
But they're expensive. They're more expensive. So, and the other nutrients, and also there's a lot of what's called excipients in supplements. So sort of binders and fillers. And they take up a lot of space, and you're sort of swallowing them. And, sometimes they're things like talc and
Ugh.
strange things. Yeah. So yeah, I think, you get what you pay for with supplements. I think it's worth spending the money on them.
Yeah, and it's hard because obviously, everyone's financial situations are different. But what I've realised is what I used to do was just blanket take supplements without really understanding if they were the right supplements for me, if I needed them. And actually, now I have worked with a nutritionist, I'm taking less supplements. I'm taking the right supplements, and I'm taking better quality supplements. So in the end, it's probably not actually cost me any more money, and I am feeling a difference now 6 months down the line,
Yeah, well,
taking the
that's great.
supplements that I am taking, which is great. And I've made changes to my diet and lifestyle as well. And so it has to be those things. I don't believe it's the placebo effect. I'm not that kind of person. I know I feel
Yeah.
demonstrably better, and my levels of things have been retested and are better. So I mean, I believe that there needs to be that personalization around supplementation. And that's where obviously people like yourself can come in to be able to just really test people and curate what they need to take and advise on brands and things
When
like
to take them as well,
yes.
when to
Yeah, and how long and
don't take
yeah.
enzyme Q10 before you're going to bed, because it'll just sort of send you into some kind of spiral. Even multivitamins, don't take iron. If you take thyroxine for your thyroid, take iron at the other end of the day. People don't know, and often clinics don't know, so they don't tell them, when to take things and when not to take things.
Yeah, and you made an important point there as well, considering what the medication and things that people might be on. So I completely bought into that kind of personalization piece. Are there any supplements? We've mentioned vitamin D, obviously folic acid for so vitamin D for both male and females, folic acid for
yes,
for women.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that blanket if you are trying to conceive as a couple, if you're a heterosexual couple, is there anything blanket wise that people should be taking apart from those two things?
Definitely a good, a good level of vitamin D, selenium, because it's really important for the thyroid. These are in most supplements, I have to say. Folate, I personally always like to put my women over 35 on 800 micrograms of folate. This has come up in quite a lot of evidence that actually 400 may not be enough for certain sections of the population. But I think if you're a little bit older, 35, so 800 of folic acid or folate, bit of CoQ10, ubiquinol, because it's better absorbed, or what's called microactive CoQ10. That's a useful one. Omega-3. Omega-3 is important. Our good fats help both eggs and sperm, and our brains. And, we don't eat enough of the good fats, of the omega-3s. So I believe that you should supplement them, especially in preparation for pregnancy as well, because they're very important.
And would you say the supplements you've mentioned are the same for men and women?
Oh, pretty well, actually. Vitamin D, yes. Zinc, yes. Folate, yes, very important. Omega-3, yes, very important. In fact, ubiquinol, very important, CoQ10. So yeah, very similar.
For both sides. And it's interesting you mentioned about the omega-3. So I've been supplementing with the right strength, the right brand through the nutritionist that I was working with. I've been taking omega-3 for the last 6 months. And do you know what I noticed the biggest difference for me, apart from joints, is clarity of thinking. So I'm in menopause.
Yeah.
So brain fog was
dreadful. Menopause.
Yeah. And from that point of view, I feel sharp again. I feel like myself.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's not a placebo. That's why people take it. And there's loads of evidence on brain function and omega-3.
Because there's also, when the nutritionist explained it to me, I didn't realise that really it's impossible to get the right amount and the right quality of the omega-3 oils in your diet. It's pretty much impossible without supplementation.
Back in the day, when we used to eat a lot of fish before our rivers and seas were polluted,
Mhm.
and we ate a lot of fish, we had loads of dietary omega-3. But now, you're told, eat oily fish twice a week, but don't eat it more than twice a week.
Because of the
That
mercury.
kind of message that comes in. So, yeah, I mean, I think you should eat a bit of fish, but yeah, but you can't eat sort of salmon every day like we did like our ancestors did, or fish, or, remember when oysters in Victorian times,
Mm-hmm.
those were a really cheap snack food,
I know.
and so they were
Oh,
packed full of zinc and iodine, and they had a bit of omega-3 in them as well, and people just ate them like we eat crisps. Imagine.
and like you said earlier, times have changed so much in terms of what we eat. We're not eating what our grandparents ate. Things have changed so much that it makes it even harder. And, to say that we're a Western country, that there'll be a lot of nutritionally deficient people
Absolutely. It's called
walking
first
around.
world malnutrition, actually.
Yes.
First world malnutrition.
Which
Yeah,
is fascinating, and it shouldn't happen in a country like ours, but it
absolutely
is. It's
not.
good to be aware of, isn't it?
Mm.
I mean, it shouldn't happen in any country anywhere. It's horrendous, but like you say, in a developed country, you think, well,
Yeah,
how does that happen? But
wasteful.
again, that then comes down to the quality, because if I imagine if I went to my local supermarket and just got an omega-3 supermarket own brand, it would probably be full of like fish that we don't want to
Yeah.
be.
Yes.
And it's looking out for, I'm presuming, brands like Zeta West. Do you recommend any other brands?
Biology, Inessa, Nordic Naturals, Minami, and they all get their omega-3 from small fish. It's the big fish that have all the chemicals in them. So tuna has mercury in it. So they get their omega-3 from things like anchovies and sardines and little fish that swim around, which are also relatively more sustainable. I mean, that's a whole other subject, isn't it? And then they filter them and as well, and clean them. Probably I wouldn't necessarily go down the cod liver oil route now, because the liver is a
Mhm,
major detoxification organ of every creature. Uh,
mhm.
who knows what is in that cod's liver. So much better to get fish skin oil from small fish. So just read the ingredients.
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip. Thank you. Yeah, and they are more expensive, but as I say, because I've worked with a nutritionist, I'm now taking the right things, and I'm not taking lots of weird and wonderful things. I'm taking the right things and the right quality things, and that's how I can see the impact. But as part of that, importantly, it's not just about supplementation, is it? It's also about um, the food as well, the food side of things.
3/4
Um,
food, 1/4 the supplements. The
yeah, I've heard that. Yeah,
supplements, they don't make up for the food that you eat.
we can't out supplement the food that we eat, unfortunately.
No, you can't. You've got the fiber and all the complex sort of matrix that food is. You can't replicate it in a supplement. You just can't. But you can make up, you can use those novel ones, and you can make up for deficiencies like vitamin D and omega-3 and iron. Then that's great. But the sort of wider group of nutrients, get it from your diet.
So, how does food support things like mood and stress and like hormonal balance when you're trying to conceive and when preparing for things like IVF?
Well, partly just doing a meal plan gives you more control. You've suddenly got control over something. And when
Mhm,
I talk to my clients, I try and link the food directly to fertility. So rather than just making a generic kind of, eat your greens and eat a Mediterranean diet and eat fish twice a week. Yeah, we all know that. It's like white noise, isn't it now? Don't
mhm.
EPFs. I try and say, look, this has a direct effect, and this is cow research, all right? It's cows. But the ovaries of cows are heavily researched, because cows are very valuable. They have IVF, they're lactating, they're pregnant, they're lactating. They have a horrible time, actually. They have very high
Wow.
incidence of polycystic ovaries. Masses of research is done on animals. And
Mhm.
although that's the bottom of the pyramid of studies, it's very useful when it comes to fertility, looking at animal research. So I can say to them, look, take your flaxseed powder because it's been shown that it's very good for cows and humans' ovarian function. Egg yolks, so we talk a lot about things like eggs. Egg yolks, because they contain a colour, the yellow colour, which is called lutein, which is the pigment. Think lutein, luteinizing hormone. It's the same spelling. And lutein literally goes, it really literally does. It goes into the eyes. It's very important for the eyes, and it goes into the ovarian follicles. A hen's egg is not that much difference from our own eggs. You know, I know it's not, we don't really want to think like that. Blueberries are another good one because they help to open blood vessels. So anything that actually helps open blood vessels and increasing blood flow. So I just say, look, imagine your little tiny ovaries there and your uterine lining, it's all quite small, and you want a really good nutrient-rich, oxygen-rich blood flow in there. And then it makes it easier to follow the diet. Carrots, orange vegetables, they help ovarian function. Dairy products, which is another very controversial, I know we're going to come on to the don't eat this, do eat that. Ooh, don't eat dairy. It's really bad for you. It's really inflammatory. Don't eat gluten. I think you've got to kind of take some of that sort of blanket, frightening stuff with a pinch of salt, actually.
Yeah, I do, because they're also massive changes. Yeah, exactly. And this is the thing, because, just putting myself back when we were trying to conceive and when we were struggling to conceive and then preparing for IVF, you are so stressed. You are so overwhelmed. It is such a difficult time. And you're already berating yourself. Well, I did. Felt like this was my fault somehow. And actually, there are things that we can do to try and help and influence things, but we don't want to do is make ourselves feel ill or think that we've not done enough. And, I think sometimes it's about thinking, what small changes can I start with even, or we start with, that can just feel like we've taken a bit of control back. We're doing something positive.
Yes.
And we're not having to necessarily restrict or cut out major food groups, but actually what can we be adding in, and maybe what things could we know more about and then decide whether or not we want to avoid. So what small changes or things do you think people need to know that they can consider maybe changing, adding in or taking out on a day-to-day basis that doesn't feel overwhelming, but that actually could have quite a positive impact?
I think in the run-up to an IVF cycle, if we're talking strictly IVF, okay, the closer you get to egg collection, the more on it you probably need to be, okay? So everybody says it's a 3-month plan, which technically it is for mature eggs and mature sperm, to be grown, as it were, or to develop. But I think you need a structure, you need a plan, you need to write a meal plan, because if you are opening your fridge after work and you're looking in your fridge and it's got a piece of cheese in it and half a bottle of wine, and you think, oh right, I'll just have beans on toast, or I'll have something. Well, I love beans on toast actually, or a pasta with a tomato sauce, and I'll use up the rest of the cheese. That's really not enough. That as you get close to having those precious eggs collected, you need to be thinking about the food, and it's not complicated food. It's like carrots and broccoli, and you need your greens, you need your vegetables. I just get people to eat broccoli. All of those
broccoli
vegetables are important, but it's much easier to just eat broccoli if you're in a hurry. You just eat broccoli, half a pack each of tender stem, very light, or, florets, doesn't matter what kind of broccoli it is, just don't overcook it. Have your 2 tablespoons of olive oil a day, really important, very interesting stuff. Drizzle it over your broccoli. What's my protein in this meal? I say to people, just look at your meal and think, where's my protein? There's more protein in beans on toast than there is. So beans on toast with steamed broccoli on the side, what's wrong with that? It's probably fine, as a meal. Quick. Eggs, fantastic. If you like eggs, a quick omelette, a little salad, chopped up vegetables, bit of olive oil on it. Doesn't have to take ages.
Progress, not perfection, I'm hearing.
Yes, exactly. But you have your structure.
Yeah.
What's my protein? Where are my orange vegetables? This is what I say to my clients. Where are my orange vegetables? Where are my cruciferous vegetables, my broccoli? Have I got my olive oil on it? And then your carbs. Most of us don't need to eat so many carbs.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to swap the carb space on the plate for the vegetables. So the vegetables take up the biggest amount of space. Then you've got protein. And then you've got your carbs. Between 20 and 25% of your plate is carbs, not 50% of your plate is carbs. Got a nice balance, and then a bit of oil goes over the top of it. And it's just about the planning, honestly. I will send you my shopping list. I've done a shopping list, okay? And it's just about getting a piece of paper and sitting with your partner and going, right, what we're going to eat this week. And then you do your shopping around your shopping list. So you're not meandering around the supermarket.
Hungry.
150 quid, hungry, big mistake, not go to the supermarket when you're hungry. Do try and walk on the outside rims of the supermarket, because it's the inside of the middle of the supermarket that's got the danger foods in it. But, we've all done it. I go to the supermarket and, I might spend 150 quid and then I've still got nothing to eat the next.
Oh, I know.
Because I haven't written a plan. I've just like, yes, And actually, I try and practice what I preach now a bit and write my plan, so that I'm having chicken on Sunday, I'm having, some kind of lentil thing on Monday, I'm having fish on Tuesday, I'm having another vegetarian thing on Wednesday. I try and move a lot of what I have for dinner, leftovers, so I cook a bit more than I need so I can have it for lunch the next day. Because like everybody, I'm a bit time poor. I can't be creating exotic meals, but lunch and dinner, and keep it simple. Do what's in your budget. These foods are not expensive. People say, "Oh, fruit and vegetables," they're not. They really aren't, actually. And you can do a lot with beans and lentils. Cheap things like that. Bit of fish. A roast chicken, ideally in an ideal world, we'd all get organic roast chicken. But just go for the next grade down if you can't afford 15 quid. Just don't get the £4 chicken, because the £4 chicken is virtually probably not even a chicken. God knows what it is. But you can get a lot of action out of roasting a chicken. You can get several meals for 2 people out of a roast chicken. Make a soup, you can make a stock, a bone broth. You can have it in a sandwich, with a bit of, I'm a big fan of watercress. Is your salad vegetable of choice, is got to be watercress. Half an avocado a day if you like avocado, and you can manage half an avocado. Very good for your fertility for various reasons. So it's just these different foods, and you just do your meal plan. And then you have to, then you rotate your meal plan. You just do 3 weeks and then you've got your meals, don't have to make a new meal plan every week.
Yeah, I think sometimes we overcomplicate things, don't we? We all do. And I think there's some really helpful tips in there, some small changes like the planning and things that we can do. And it's I liked what you said about, in an ideal world, maybe we would all eat organic, but actually, that isn't, we're not in an ideal world and everybody's got different budgets. So looking at what is the best quality you can afford, and that's okay, isn't it? Okay, so I want to come on lastly to talk about the kind of male factor side of things, because I know you've done a lot of work in this. Well, we are starting to see more people talking about male factor side of things. Hurrah, at last. And so tell us some interesting things about the male factor side that would, people maybe don't know or that you want to share.
Well, quite a topical one, actually, is age. We're back on the subject of age. Women are always being told, "Oh, it's your knackered old eggs," basically unsaid in brackets. You shouldn't have left it so long, you career women or something like that. Oh my God, it just drives me mad when I hear my clients being told this, But older men, and men like to put this off. I remember my husband, every time I suggested, maybe we should, no, we'll just leave it another year, and that's really important. If you get together with your partner, and that you're a thing now, you have to talk about having children because men's sperm gets old. And we know that sperm genetic quality, the DNA, becomes fragmented as men get into their mid-40s. So, I see a lot of clients who maybe are on their second relationships. They've got
Mhm.
the old bag for the younger woman, who wants to, they're trying to persuade them not to have a baby. But, if you marry a 35-year-old, well, that's what 35-year-olds want. They want to have babies, don't they? Or a baby. And they think, oh, I've had 3 children back in the whenevers, 1980s.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, I've had 3 kids, nothing wrong with me. And then I send them for a DNA frag test, and they are astonished that the DNA frag's high and the quality of the sperm is poor because they think they're Mick Jagger, basically. So there's one. Don't let your partner, especially if you're coming up to your 40s, put your having children off for too long, because apart from that being detrimental to you, the woman in this, and very stressful because all women now know that that biological time clock is kind of ticking away, but
Mm.
also the sperm doesn't improve as it gets older either. So don't fall into that trap. I just want to mention the new DNA fragmentation test, which is fascinating. This is the double-stranded DNA fragmentation test. The other one is single-strand, which
Okay.
has a lot to do with the environment of, there's lots of, like you said before, there's things you can do about it. Double-stranded tends to happen in the process of spermatogenesis, when the actual sperm, nobody quite knows how it happens, but it's not so much related to whether you're, smoking or, eating chips all day or drinking too much. It's something that you're sort of born with in a way. And it's related to, it's the first test that links male fertility to recurrent miscarriage.
Wow.
Failed euploid embryo transfers. So you've got your euploid embryos and you
Mhm.
think, great. And then they don't work. And it's like, why? And early miscarriage, first trimester miscarriage. And what's the other one that is linked with? I've said miscarriage, haven't I?
Mhm.
Yeah, so often failed implantation when, and then it all comes under this umbrella of unexplained. And unexplained is only unexplained because nobody has tried to explain it. So that's an interesting test. So if you are going through that, where you've got recurrent miscarriage, the DNA frag has been done, the single-stranded, everything's fine, the sperm looks good, the eggs look good, the embryos look good, they're euploid, you've had them PGTA tested, and it still isn't working, then the double-stranded DNA fragmentation test may be the next route in. And you will be very discouraged by clinics to do that.
Why?
Well, because like any test, and every time you do a test, you have to know what you're going to do about the result.
Okay.
What's the point of doing the test?
Yeah.
And possibly this is all in its infancy.
Mhm.
Answer so far, and it's not really an answer because it doesn't always work, is using a little gadget called a Zymot. And a Zymot is not all clinics have a Zymot, so you have to choose
Mhm.
that has a Zymot, is a little kind of obstacle course for sperm. It's a sort of advanced sperm selection tool. And basically put the ejaculate, with all the sperm in the ejaculate, into the Zymot, and it kind of makes its way travels through the Zymot, and the sperm coming out the other side is the sperm more likely to have the lowest DNA frag. And that's both double and single stranded. Then you do ICSI IVF ICSI using that sperm. And then you have PGTA embryo testing. So it's a fair old business, I have to say, and obviously very costly, but it's probably cheaper than repeatedly having IVF all the time. And also, if that's your experience and you're going back to trying naturally, again, and for a lot of people, IVF doesn't work, and actually trying naturally sort of does better, uh,
Mhm.
then that's when it's quite important to do that test, because you probably don't want to be conceiving naturally, because it may just end up in tears again, with another miscarriage. And at least you then know you've got answers to it's not unexplained anymore. And I've done a lot of DNA double-stranded tests. 3 out of 4 of them are normal, but we've looked because the situation is recurrent miscarriage and implantation failure with euploid embryos. 1 has come back really high, and they have been at this for 10 years.
Wow.
10 years. So now she's from 30 to 40. So now she's 40. So now we've got female factor coming into it, but we have an answer as to why this has been happening.
Yeah, and I think that is important for people. I work with loads of people on the unexplained infertility side of it, and I was nodding away when you were talking, because I am always banging this drum to say it's only unexplained because it's unexplored, or it's not explored enough, or it's not explored enough with the right people. And you said something else that was really kind of like made me sit up as well, which was, and this is about the importance of having the right clinic for the right people, and you're learning more in your journey. Sometimes it's about pausing and going, actually, am I still with this right clinic? So you just said then that you might be discouraged to do that double strand test because actually the clinic hasn't got the Zymot to be able to then do something about it. But
so they don't want you going off and finding a clinic that does. So they tell you, oh, it's not, there's not enough evidence. It's the stock in trade.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you're hearing these things from your clinic and this is something you want to get done, then maybe it's time to have that test done and actually be looking at a clinic that really specialises, for example, in male factor side of things, and that has the technology then to be able to deliver that to give you the best chance. And another thing you said as well, which again is quite important, a lot of people I work with who have unexplained infertility, they might not actually need IVF. And sometimes those answers aren't the answers people want, but at least they've got the answers. And sometimes those answers mean that people get pregnant naturally.
Yes.
Unexplained. It's just used so much. It's used a lot within the NHS. I'm not here to bash the NHS, but because of
it's not the money, is it?
They do very standard protocols for IVF. Same thing for everybody. For some unicorns that works. For lots of people, it doesn't work. And, people say unexplained when they just don't know. Or they don't want, they're like, well, if we find this out, we've not got the capability internally to look after this person, which is so wrong from an ethical point of view, isn't it? But this happens, and you've got to be your own advocate. You've got to
absolutely
learn more about this stuff.
Going into IVF, and doctors will just look after you, and their clinic will just take care of you and do the best for you. And, it'll be all very bespoke because you're paying, whatever you're paying, anything from $5,000 to $15,000, and then surprise, surprise, actually, that's not how it is, so you have to be your own advocate. Exactly. So, just don't take unexplained at face value and ask the questions. Have I done enough tests? Do I need an infection screen? Look at the context of what your IVF is showing you, how you're progressing through the different stages. I think that's really important. Get your doctor to talk you through, where did the embryos start to drop off? Because it gives you an idea. Day 3 is when the male genome kicks into embryogenesis. So, continuing from 1 to 3, everybody's happy, great. Then we have day 3, and then we have a drop off and no blastocysts. That is maybe I need to have the DNA frag test, and that would be the single-stranded probably, because the double-stranded shows in people who have a normal single-stranded DNA fragmentation test and a normal semen analysis. Funnily enough, if that's what you're looking at a normal semen analysis. If you're looking at a dodgy semen analysis, you're probably looking at single-stranded, and you can sort of work around that a bit better. But it's the normal one. I've had the DNA frag test, all normal. And then they do the double-stranded and it's not. But as I said, you've got a way around that. this is very new, and probably, the people I've learned this from would probably be like, oh, Mel, for God's sake, what are you doing? But I think it's just very exciting, and it's just fitting in. Don't take unexplained as the final word on it.
Yeah, and also, please don't choose a local clinic to where you live just based on location. And also, please don't stay with a clinic because it feels comfortable and easy.
And the consultant and the nurse are really nice. And yeah, you have to, at the end of the day, you want the baby, and you have to fight for the baby sometimes. We need a gatekeeper like you. I think clinics over here should take a leaf out of, in terms of the environment and the patient care, as of all the foreign clinics. They're way better. They're just better at it.
So it's about getting the right clinic for your medical needs. And it's also about getting the right clinic for your care needs and what that looks like. Some are good at replying quickly and answering questions thoroughly. This is UK and abroad. Some are not. All this stuff impacts on how you feel going through a really difficult time. And then also understanding the true costs of what your treatment's going to cost you as well, because we mentioned about the whole numbers game thing earlier. It is a numbers game still to some degree, and so we're not often always thinking past the first round of IVF. But for lots of people, they need further treatment, further testing, and if you don't understand the costings at a clinic and you blow your budget, then you may run out of money before having treatment or further testing and things. So another really important element as well. And, there's some great clinics on the male factor side of things. And, what I see a lot of is people, and I'm not shaming anyone by saying this, we only know what we know at the time, don't we? And when I was doing this myself, I had no idea what I was doing. But like a lot of people, if they are lucky enough to kind of qualify for NHS treatment, they then stay with that kind of clinic privately because it feels easy. And I get it in that you sleep in your own bed every night and you're used to the staff and the nurses and that or whatever. But actually, if that's not the right clinic for you, and every cycle of fertility treatment is both therapeutic and diagnostic, right? So we need to be gathering those things, asking the questions. You are the customer. It's so important to advocate for yourself. And if you're not sure which clinic to find, then you need to come to somebody like myself and I'll help you to match, because it's so important. It's important in giving you the best chances of success. It's important in you not looking back with any regrets, like you said yesterday, earlier, understanding that you've done everything that you can because that's what we can do, and not just presuming that actually these people have always got your best interest at heart, because sadly, and it kills me because a lot of people that work in this industry are good people. It's not like that anyway. It's big business for these clinics, and they're not going to say to you, we're not the right clinic for you. Well, some would, but most of them will say, we can help you. And I mean, there have been a couple of clinics that, as people have learned things on their journeys, like they've come to me and they've said, actually, our clinic in the UK are now saying, we're not the right clinic for you. That is brilliant. Wow. That is great. And so rarely.
But you're right. It's big business. A lot of the clinics have been bought up by hedge funds and venture capital, and it's all about how many cycles, IVF cycles. So actually, even somebody being successful is not really part of the business model, isn't it? It's a very tricky situation. But one thing I do notice, and it's my last thing on the IVF clinics, is if you can have an NHS cycle, which isn't like 3 years away or something, but you're offered one, a lot of my clients, they don't take it. They go straight to private. Now, I think it's really worth having the NHS one because you gather a lot of information from that first cycle. The success rate of IVF is not, if you were told you're having a new hip and you were told, it's only 28% success of this working, you'd probably think, well, I would. I'd probably think, well, I'm not going to have, I'll just do that one, thanks. And people, their expectations are quite high because it's a very much, one size fits all approach because they don't know how you're going to respond to the meds. So you learn a lot from that first cycle. So even if it fails, you've got information to then take to the private clinic, and then they can work with that and more tailor make your plan. And then you've wasted that first cycle on paying for it. So don't ignore the NHS and sometimes it does work through
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
FGS, you know,
Mhm.
but take that
Absolutely.
and think of it just as an information gathering, and it's an added bonus if it works, but it's an information. It also teaches you how you're managing, how your progress is through IVF, and you learn a lot from it.
I couldn't agree more. Melanie,
I know
I
we've been
could
on
talk to
this.
you about this all day long.
I know. We'll be putting the audience to sleep soon, Emma.
Oh, well, hopefully not. I mean, I've loved listening to you. And, not all clinics, I think what we're saying here is not all clinics are the same in good ways and not so good ways. So it's about finding the right one for
For
you, doing what we can.
you, exactly.
Yeah. And feeling like I never asked any questions back then. I was too scared to ask a doctor anything. I didn't really know what to ask. And now I'm completely different. But that's because I've been through this. But, sometimes people feel like they can't because they're doctors and they feel this power imbalance, but you are a
Yeah,
customer. This is too important. And also, I think it's really interesting how clinics respond to being asked a lot of questions. And the ones that are worth anything are the ones that will patiently answer your questions and want you to ask questions and for you to fully understand so you can make informed decisions. So hopefully that's something that people can take away, and so
absolutely.
many helpful tips as well of things that people can do, progress, not perfection. And, if you want to get some help from Melanie with more bespoke testing, supplementation, meal plans, then where can people find you, Melanie?
I am on Instagram, Melanie Brown Nutritionist, and my website is Melanie Brown Nutrition. So,
And you very kindly said you're going to send me a shopping
yeah, I'm
list.
going to send you a shopping list. Yeah, because I think that is probably the most useful thing, actually. I'll send
Definitely.
a sample meal plan and a blank meal plan. So
Thank you very much. That's really, really kind. So go and give Melanie a follow over on Instagram if you don't
yeah, please,
already.
um, put on
Through your
yeah,
website as well. And I will pop a link to Medichecks below as well if people are thinking, I need to go get my vitamin D
great.
done, or I want my
Yeah,
iron tested. I will pop a link in the show notes to that as well, and all Melanie's links too. But yeah, thank you so much.
brilliant talking to you. Yeah, we could chat for hours, couldn't we? My heart goes out to you. It really does. But, stay strong, keep the faith, and advocate for yourselves.
Wise words. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye. If you are facing more obstacles than options and want to learn more about how to overcome your fertility testing and treatment challenges in your home country so that you too can fast track to growing your family and on your terms, then check out my free training at yourivfabroad.co.uk/free masterclass. Don't forget to rate and subscribe so you don't miss an episode and so that I can reach and help more people. Thanks for listening.